What it is, YouTube? Is your boy DC coming back with another bullseye of a video here today on the channel. I wanted to make a free FLP that y'all could download in the link down below, talking about Metro Boomin, showcasing a little bit of Metro Boomin. You know, if I had to mix a song for Metro Boomin, how would I go about approaching it in some of Metro Boomin style in terms of actual mixing? I know there's thousands of how to make a Metro Boomin type beat on YouTube, but I actually want to talk about it from the perspective of a mixing engineer. All right, so if y'all like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below. Check the links to also support the channel in the comments. Let me know what you think. What type of plugins would you be using to achieve that pro Metro Boomin sound? So with Metro Boomin, I also always notice that he has this ability to stack drums together and always get a good density and a good groove and a good feeling. So actually, I want to talk about the master fader, what I would use today. You know, I'd probably use like an API 2500 on a Metro Boomin type of production with the vocal and 21 Savage and all that shit, because I know it's gonna bring the mid-range out forward. So it's kind of like I got this really dope lemon right here, and all I gotta do is just squeeze the juice out to get the thing that I want, which is the juice, the sauce. You feel me? So yeah, that's the thing about it. You know, even a guy like Metro Boomin, he still gotta get his songs mixed once, because once the vocal is over a beat, the mid-range is occupied, and then you gotta get a mixing engineer to come in there. API 2500 is great because it pushes mid-range forward. It's a VCA bus compressor, and it has different side chains, right? And that's important for a person like Metro Boomin, where his stuff is all about the groove. You know, usually you would use the attack and release to, you know, get the groove right, but also the internal side chain of the API 2500 is another way to nail the groove. All right. Then there's something like a pull tech, just a little bit of tube warmth would be great too, because I know that Metro Boomin, his bass is always banging. The low end is always big and full and thick, but never overwhelming. So that's something that I understand about the tube tech EQP1A, the pull tech, is that even though, you know, you might push it to like 4 or 5, it never really sounds like the bass is flooded. It never sounds like the water is flooding the beach. All right. Ozone, you know, just to use the stereo imager and width, you know, and there's gonna be some redundant frequencies between the vocal as well as the beat. So that's where ozone stabilizer or soothe or whatever would come in handy. Now, when it comes to Metro Boomin, his low end is always moving and shit. So I think that it would be really cool to use something like a Voice of God Little Lab, not to necessarily change the sound, but to push more of the mid range out of there. Okay. And sometimes with a rapper like Future, you want maybe some of the low end of the song to be occupied by the vocal. Future has a deep voice, so you don't want to I want to keep a little bit of the belly. You feel me? You want to keep a little bit of belly. You don't want a straight up six pack. You just want to have a decent, you feel me, a decent thing, you know? So imagine it to be like that if it was working out. So I like the VOG because it's a resonant bump. You feel me? So imagine it's like this. It's like it does a filter like this, and then it does like a crazy bump like this. You feel me? So that's what this plugin is doing. Now you could recreate it with a simple EQ, but there's some other sauce behind that plugin that make it sound good as fuck when you start playing with the knobs. When it comes to the 808 sub bass, I like a plugin like Low End Focus from Ozone. Now, a plugin like this, you might want to just put on the master fader because it's got a lot of latency. But in terms of a sub bass, I love how this plugin actually lets you really change low end. You feel me? It really lets you go in there, and maybe you want to add a little bit more transient to something like a sub bass, because maybe the drums are knocking hard, but maybe now you have a sub bass section like on Perky's Calling or something like that, and you just want it to you feel more plump and big. You don't want it to feel like one shoe that's bigger than the other foot. Okay, so that's why you would go with something like the low end focus on the Ozone 11. And I like the presets too. You got a bunch of different presets, like you can warm up the bass, you can, you know, really clean, you can make things more clean, more even, more, you know, it's just a perfect low end tool. So that's why I would use it on the Metro Boomin production. I'd go back to that Voice of God's Little Lab again, just because Metro Boomin, I notice his low end is always moving, right? It's never really like long and sustaining. It's really like tuh, tuh, tuh. It's like just like a fucking groove. You feel me? So yeah, L2 would be great too to give a little transient control on a limiter. Maybe only tapping it by a dB or two. You feel me? Just using the limiter to control, the kick on the actual track before it hits the master fader is great to make sure we still get the track loud as fuck. Okay, and then when I noticed by Metro Boomin, what I always made me love Metro Boomin on Where Your Ass Is At is how the claps are so chunky. Chop, chop, chop. His claps are so chunky. So I feel like it's not just about just EQ and boosting, but sometimes harmonic density, they get that chunkiness of the thick fries, the thick cut fries. So that's why I would go about and, use a Spectre. I use it on warm mode, and use it on warm mode and boost it up in the lows right here, and it's gonna kind of help glue that clap. It's not gonna feel discombobulated from the big bass and the kick. When it comes to the hi-hats, maybe just adding a little bit of transient for Metro Boomin. Sometimes when you have a bus compressor, though, the rest of the sounds of the mix might change too, because the bus compressor might, depending on the release, might like elongate the sound of some things. This is especially true on like acoustic instruments and shit like that. It might bring out the tail more. So sometimes hi-hats or percussion instruments can get longer than what they were on the demo. Maybe you might have excessive clipping on a rough mix and stuff like that, and instruments now sound like they have more attack and sustain than they really did. So I would use like a hi-hat, you feel me? On the hi-hats I would maybe like cut down sustain, more than like you probably cut down sustain, so the hi-hats still feel like that grooving pattern, you feel me? When it comes to the drums, soft clipper, we already know that, we don't have to talk about it, but soft clippers just bring out more of that mid-range, they dump out more hot sauce, they bring out more aggression. Okay, something like a piano, if he was using some type of keys, maybe he got some keys from Zaytoven or something like that. I think a Neve 33609 is great because of the diode bridge components. They help to sustain, they make every note just feel like they're more impactful and more meaningful, and that's why this is a legendary bus compressor. And I like the lighter ratios. Lighter ratios to me are better because they kind of just hug a sound, they wrap their arms around it, versus where higher ratios, they just work more on the peak energy because they change the shape of the knee of a compressor, you feel me? Especially this is true on, especially like on an SSLE or SSLG. As you turn up the ratio, the knee starts to get harder, the shape of the compression starts to become a little bit more jagged. All right, so I think a 33609 would be great. When it comes to something like a pad, like a lot of the things that Future used on Purple Rain, those sustaining pads, I think that only a dab bit of warmth from a LA3A would be great. LA2A is oftentimes used on synths and pads too, but the problem with the LA2A is that it has brightness, and with that street gritty music, you just want it to be warm, but warm and dark. There's two different types of lights. One that's a warm light, but it's super bright, but then a warm light that's still kind of dark and just fucking moody as hell. So that's why I would go with a LA3A over the 2A. Now, when it comes to something like a synth, I think his synths are always great and stacked well, but I would probably use something like a Widener. A lot of the songs on Purple Rain, a lot of the songs on 66 Nights, I'm not sure if he produced every beat on that, but a lot of those tracks, that the synths have great width. So rather than using like a stereo Widener or S1, that will bring maybe phase problems and stuff like that, because it's using phase to do the spread. I probably use something like a micro shift that's using a doubler to do the spreading, and that will sound a little bit more natural and organic in the whole context of the track. Probably using a low shelf too, because you want the synths to have low end, but you just want to diminish it, and that's why you sometimes you got to use a low shelf over using something like a actual, like a straight up like filter. Okay, I'm not gonna be able to do a regular high pass, but that's why you use a low shelf over an extra filter. When it comes to the bells, maybe a little bit more transient enhancement. Lead vocals, like Future, 21 Savage, just a little bit of auto tune. I like Waves Tune Real Time because it's pretty natural sounding. And with the lead vocal, definitely a Tube Tech CL1B. That's what Future uses a lot of the time. But yeah, you want to make sure the vocal also has a great plump mid range, a Georgia peach plumpness to it as well. You feel me? So it can still feel full and thick and sweet, and that's what a great advantage you get from using something like a Shep 73 with a Tube Tech Seal 1B. It's like peanut butter and jelly. But then you want to get to the point where that mid range isn't overwhelming, because certain words are going to have more mid range body than others, and that's why something like a Fab Filter Pro MB is great for Future vocals. Nav is another artist that work with Metro Boomin a lot of time. 21 Savage, where his vocals are up front and you hear that little low resonance and shit, but you still want to control it. You still want it to sound clean. SSLG gangster mode, I definitely go with that because it gives a gritty street texture to a lot of the Metro Boomin stuff. And of course, the Valhalla stuff is like the signature sound of trap. So that's pretty much the end of the video here today, man. You want to grab this FLP, it's for free. Check it in the link down below, okay? download it, play around with some of the presets or whatever, and let me know, guys, how do you feel about Metro Boomin? What plugins do you think Metro Boomin would sound good on Metro Boomin production, like with the vocal in the final song? And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below. Let me know what you think about this video. Just want to say I appreciate you guys now a lot, my YouTube family. All right, peace.